In the Black Out Loud.
Lead with calm. The interplay between emotional intelligence and the inner workings of a leader's mind determines the impact they have on their teams. By Alexandra Cain. This article has been edited for audio purposes. Article begins, "The best leaders are not those who can direct others, but more often the ones who are able to control themselves. Those who can lead with calm will see this behaviour reflected in the performance and behaviour of their employees. Of course, this is difficult and requires self-mastery on several levels. Introspection and receptivity. Calm, stable leadership starts with introspection and an ability to take on negative feedback. You've got to see yourself as an instrument that needs to be managed to be effective and to manage others," says Dr. Travis Kemp, organisational psychologist, coach and adjunct professor at the University of South Australia's Business School. What's important is to be able to take on feedback without rejecting or being defensive about it. The temptation, as a leader, is to take feedback as absolute, without contextualising it and understanding the source and the complexities along the way that lead to that feedback, says Kemp. That's one of the levels of sophistication we haven't got to quite yet in the feedback process around leadership. The leader's shadow. It is vital for a leader to appreciate how their actions impact others. The popular term is the shadow I cast as a leader, says Kemp. This requires a level of openness and a willingness to sit in discomfort and understand what triggers a defensive position in someone else. The goal is to create an environment where people feel safe enough to tell the truth without fear of retaliation or consequence, even though that may be an unpleasant experience for the leader. Connecting with people on a personal level helps build understanding as well as a good relationship. Talk about what's going on in your life and your responsibilities. The more context and understanding you have, the more connection you will build, says leadership development expert Wendy Bourne. It is also important for leaders to remember that the only person they can change is themselves. Expecting somebody else to change is a waste of your energy. Focus on what is within your circle of control, says Bourne. Calm under pressure. Another essential skill for leaders is staying calm under pressure. This is a cognitive state that can be deliberately trained. Cognitive reframing, which involves reinterpreting a threat as a challenge, draws on the brain's executive attention network, the system that enables focus and decision-making under pressure. When leaders consciously shift their appraisal of a stressful situation, it reduces activation in the amygdala, the brain's threat detection centre, allowing for clearer and more strategic thinking, says Lainey Cassidy, Head of Wellbeing, Mental Health and Safety at KPMG Australia. Calm leaders are not devoid of emotion. They simply direct their cognitive resources toward what matters most and filter out the noise. This ability to stay regulated is not innate. Rather, it can be built by fostering mental skills that help us respond to difficult events. When something unpleasant happens, frustration triggers a response where emotion overrides logic. Strong leaders recognize this early and interrupt the cycle. They develop what is called metacognition, or the ability to think about their thinking, says Cassidy. This involves leaders consciously choosing the way to respond, rather than reacting reflexively. To break the cycle, perhaps take deep breaths to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, then mentally assess what's being threatened. For instance, values, time, or control. Strong leaders also understand that frustration often masks something deeper, whether it is a misalignment in values or a fear of being misunderstood. Leaders who address the root cause, not just the symptom, model emotional intelligence and reduce collateral damage to team morale and engagement, says Cassidy. Avert imposter syndrome. Understanding the game the inner voice plays helps with self-mastery. The inner game is a set of mental and emotional patterns that impact how a leader interprets and responds to the world around them. It helps to think of it as a script that runs internally, that can inhibit or propel. The script can evolve over time. Our brains like a certain level of predictability and certainty, so the inner game shifts depending on the uncertainty a person is feeling at different stages in their career, says Dr. Tanvi Gautam, founder of leadership consultancy Leadership Inc. For example, Leaders at an early career stage are focused on whether people believe they are good enough or not. With more experience, the inner voice shifts to questioning how long they can maintain their executive position and repeat their success. Gaining control of the mental script comes down to acknowledging critical self-beliefs. We have to put distance between this voice in your head and who you really are, recognizing that it is just a voice. Then you have to reframe the harmful belief. For example, if you think you're not good enough, what are the 3 things you could do that prove you are, says Gautam. Addressing self-doubt, or to use a common phrase, imposter syndrome, is a rite of passage for most leaders. The internal landscape of a professional, their mindset, emotional processing, and self-concept deeply influences their external impact, says Cassidy. Aspiring leaders often wrestle with imposter syndrome, which neuroscience suggests is rooted in an overactivation of the brain's default mode network, which is the system involved in self-referential thinking. Engaging with other leaders or mentors is a good way to gain perspective and overcome self-doubt, but it can take time. Building the emotional skills a leader requires to stay calm under pressure is a lifetime's work. Every day is an opportunity to practice.
In the Black Out Loud.